Welcome back to the Sustainable Farm Podcast. My name is Jaylee, and I'm here with Jerry. And today we are going to be talking about why modern food is making us sick. 678,000 Americans die each year from chronic food illness. That toll is higher than all our combat deaths in every war in American history combined. So, Jerry, I think to start, how has modern farming contributed to the degradation of soil quality?
Oh, my goodness. Originally, we started out as settlers in an agrarian society. We didn't have transportation. We didn't have electricity. We had none. You know, you had to source your water from a spring or from a well. So we didn't have anything but the natural resources on the top of the earth.
Yeah.
So we ate local food. You know, that's the buzzword today is, buy local.
Yep.
But there was no choice. So we have progressed. History is quite interesting because years ago, I have a book right here, Dairy Bacteriology, written by Russell and Hastings, and it has the food adulteration laws in it from 1910.
Wow.
If you took any of the cream out of the milk, it was adulterated.
Oh, wow. That's interesting.
1910.
Wow.
If you added anything to the milk, it was adulterated.
They wanted pure.
And the challenge in the 1800s, so this is written in 1910, were the diseases, typhoid fever, tuberculosis, scarlet fever. Those aren't the disease, those are dealt with. Okay, we're in a different society today.
Yeah.
But those were the problems back then. They didn't anticipate we would be taking milk apart right from the get-go. Taking all the cream out. It was illegal.
Wow.
It was illegal.
They'd roll over in their graves if they knew what we were doing now.
They would say, why are you doing that?
Yeah.
We're trying to make the milk clean, not change it.
Right.
So people have this saying, you can't stop progress. And every time we change something, we don't see the negative side of what it does to us. Right. History reveals it, but it takes many years. It's very interesting. We're talking about the adulterated food law, Listeria, the pathogens, the bacteria that could get into the food. However, the deaths from those types of illnesses are very small.
Yes. Yeah.
But daily, the number is greater for the illnesses, the obesity, diabetes, cancer, heart attacks, from what's in our food.
Yes.
We've changed our food.
And I think people are becoming more and more aware of that fact.
So we have the same adulterated food law, but we have a very different food system.
Oh, yeah.
Very different.
Yes.
We have foods that they didn't have back then. There was only 800 foods in the grocery store back in the 1900s. Now we have 60,000.
Very little of it good for you.
There's no more vegetables in the garden.
Right.
These are not new foods.
Right.
This is a man-made concoction. So we have a whole different, this is going to be quite interesting.
Well, and even the food that's being sold in the grocery store, and in terms of like the vegetables and the fruits and things like that, the way that they're being handled is completely different. I know that bananas are ripened in a gas chamber.
Okay.
It's crazy.
So when we had a local food system, you had to pick it when it was ripe and get it sold.
Yeah.
And if you didn't sell it, you had to preserve it,
Right.
Tomato sauce.
Sure.
You had to
Salt, cure it, something.
Feed it to the pigs. You had to do something.
Yeah.
It didn't last.
Right.
What about our food today? What's the shelf life of the food that we eat today?
A lot longer.
Okay. Most of our fruits, nuts, vegetables, and berries come from the Central Valley of California or Mexico.
Yeah.
And they all have 1,500 miles of transport on them. So your tomatoes, all your produce has to be from a variety that can be shipped.
Yeah.
So they're firm. You can slice them 1/16 of an inch. The strawberries even.
Yeah.
All of this stuff. So we've selected varieties just for shelf life and transportation.
Well, and they're being picked before ripeness too.
Okay. And then we have to modify and treat them to get them ripe when we want them.
Right.
So this is a whole new ball game.
Oh yeah. It's the people that were involved at this time would not. It's a different world.
It's a different world.
Yeah.
Now this author studied bacteriology under Louis Pasteur in Paris.
Wow.
Yeah. I just took this to a summit in Albany for 2 days.
Yeah.
And I showed this to a professor that graduated from the University of Wisconsin, Madison.
Yeah.
And he was like, I can't believe you have this book.
That's very cool.
So we have two different worlds here. The world of created food, and now we're dealing today with the illness and the outcome of manufactured food.
Yes. Yeah. So let's speak to modern farming.
Okay. So what we have right now, they're working on the Farm Bill.
Yeah.
It was supposed to be done in September.
Tell us about this.
Okay. I went to a Farm Bill listening session in Portland, New York, up by Lake Erie.
Oh, wow.
They gave everybody 3 minutes. I didn't get to speak, but I wanted to go as a dairy farmer and share my situation with them, which we just left the milk market because it doesn't pay a viable pay price to small family farms.
Yeah.
So we have a crisis. A crisis is an opportunity to make a change. They didn't enforce the 3-minute rule. There were more speakers than time. All the officials got in their cars and went to the next meeting, and I didn't get to speak.
Yeah.
So what is the Farm Bill? The Farm Bill is a huge financial pledge of our federal government, mostly for food stamps, but it also subsidizes commodities.
Okay.
We're talking corn, soybeans, cotton, sugar, basic commodities. Now, if you're a farmer and you have land, you want to make money.
Yeah.
You got to pay the bills.
Yep.
Now, these guys love farming. I'm a farmer. So I'm speaking from 45 years of farming experience here. You love what you do. You're passionate about it, but you got to pay the bills.
Yeah.
So when they have a farm bill that guarantees a price that's above the cost of production for those commodities, that is what the farmers are going to plant.
Yeah.
Because they know it'll work. Now, the interesting fact is corn and soybeans, I just read the acreage. The corn acreage is down a couple million acres this year. They were both, I think, 89 or 90 million acres. Wow. But the soybeans are increasing and the corn is down. When the price of one goes up, then they switch over to plant more acres of that. But it's just a jostling back and forth. Now, all these acres of corn, I don't eat a lot of corn. Do you eat a lot of corn?
Oh, don't even get me started on this.
Okay.
It's being used to make oil.
Okay. So 45% of this corn in planted acres, because of the policy of the federal government, is going to ethanol production. The rest of it is going to animal feed. With the soybean, the same thing. It's not ethanol production, but it's animal feed, and it's going into the food industry, and they're taking these oils and they're hydrogenating them, they're modifying them, and they're creating starches, and they're building foods, and then they put flavor enhancers in.
High fructose corn syrup is another one.
Now, if you're reading the containers on your ketchup bottle or whatever you're looking at, it'll say no GMOs, no high fructose corn syrup. They're all labeled no, no, no. We need to understand what's going on here. The consumers are becoming aware.
Yeah.
These big companies are playing the same game, but they're putting up the no word for what's in there. And they may or may not be using the same flavorings, but it says naturally flavored, which has no definition.
If you see natural flavors, run, because that just is a blanket statement for all the things that they're not required to tell you is in it. Not to mention a lot of like the fructose, the corn syrups and things like that, they're just giving them new fancy names so that the consumer doesn't recognize them. They're still using them. This kind of stuff makes me so heated.
So it's a bait and switch.
Yeah, exactly.
The consumers have learned, they've got some knowledge, they've got some understanding. This is the goal why we're talking today, so that you understand what's going on.
Yeah.
Because these big food companies are huge, and they're not playing nicely. They're not interested in our health. They're interested in profit.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So this farm bill is going to determine how the soil is treated by the farmers.
Okay. All right. Oh, now, interesting.
If you've got a farm bill that supports a commodity, and the more acres of that commodity, so we have what we call subsidies. So if I have 1 acre and the subsidy is $1, I get a check for $1. Okay, it's based on acres of production or
so it's like
bushels.
Guaranteeing them a price.
It's a subsidy is a makeup. It's kind of like when your kids are young and they don't have an income stream.
Yeah. And
they want to go somewhere. You give them a job and you say, you earn part of it and I'll subsidize the rest of it. Okay. You want to go to camp? It's $150.
Yeah.
For how many days? You mow the lawn, we'll pay you this much, and then we'll kick in the rest of it.
Okay.
So a subsidy is a payback for something that doesn't cash flow.
Okay. Wow. Interesting.
Okay. So if the government is subsidizing a planting of corn and soybeans, which are not foods that we eat,
right?
Why are we doing this? Is that a fair question?
I think so, yeah.
I mean, it's our tax dollars.
Right, we should know.
Right. Well, the benefit to that is if you're a feedlot owner, that is animal feed that they're subsidizing.
Yeah.
Which means your cost of the raw materials to feed those cattle is lower.
Okay.
Okay. So it's beneficial to the feedlots. It's beneficial to the food companies that can get this cheap beginning to create their foodstuffs.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
So it's benefiting the big food industry.
Yeah. Certainly not the little local guy.
Now, why do they do that? There is a thing called corporate capture. Do you know what corporate capture is?
No, you're teaching me a lot. I've only been here for 10 minutes. I've already learned so much.
Corporate capture is when you have a food system that is larger than the government.
Okay.
And so they infiltrate these government agencies with their own people. And they make the policy decisions in the government agencies.
Interesting.
To benefit the food companies.
Okay. Interesting.
Does that sound fair?
Not at all, no.
Okay. This is where we're living.
And it still just sounds like money to me. It doesn't sound like
health. When you own that much resource, there are things that you can do to influence the direction of society.
Wow.
And we're experiencing it right now.
Interesting.
Now, if you go back to the 1800s, they had problems, but they wasn't this problem.
Right.
Okay. When they began to come into monopolies, probably the first example was the railroads. They broke them up.
Good.
Okay. We're at the point where the government lacks the power to break them up.
Wow.
So the people that are listening are the only ones with the power to change this.
And they do that through how they spend their money, right?
Every time
they choose to support.
Every time you spend $1 in the food realm, you are casting a vote for which food system you want. Do you want the farm bill that has commodity payments? So let's get back to the soil.
Yeah.
Okay. These guys have 20,000 acres.
Yeah.
And it's divided equally between corn and soybeans. And they've got the machinery.
Yep.
And they buy the seed, GMO seed.
Yep.
They buy the fertilizer.
Okay.
They buy the sprays. And they apply all that. Then they apply a desiccant. You know what a desiccant is? It's a drying agent.
Yeah.
It's a Roundup.
Wow. Great.
They spray the wheat just before they combine it to dry it down.
Wow.
With Roundup just before they harvest.
And wait. I did not know that. So that's not even to prevent pests. They're dry, like prematurely drying it so that they can harvest it all at once.
They will spray it as needed to kill the pests.
Yeah.
And the weeds, Roundups for a weed killer. But just before they harvest it, they spray it to dry it down.
That makes me sick to my stomach.
Because it kills all the green in there. So
wow.
So it'll go through the combine.
Okay.
Just before they combine it.
All right.
Okay. Now, Iowa is the cancer capital of America.
Wow, I didn't know that either.
Iowa,
you were laying down the facts today, Jerry.
Iowa imports 95% of their food.
Okay.
Iowa is like a breadbasket.
Wow.
The best soil in this country. But because they grow corn and beans and they feed hogs,
okay,
they don't have fruit orchards.
Wow.
They don't have vegetables.
What a shame.
Okay.
So they have to bring that in.
Our policies in our states and in our federal government determine what is grown. New Jersey has raw milk is illegal. So they're losing their dairy farms. People that want to buy fresh fluid milk go over the Delaware River and they buy it from Pennsylvania farmers.
Wow.
To the tune of a loss of $95 to $100 million a year. And when they go to buy their milk, they're going to buy their meat and their eggs and their other things. You like to shop for your family.
Yeah.
If you find a good source, you want to buy as much as you can from that source.
Yeah. Yeah.
You don't want to be running to 50 different places.
No.
Too much time.
Yeah.
Too much money. So these policies determine what the farmers do. Now, is this good to have bare soil, to plant the same crops year after year after year, to put fertilizer on so that you get the yield that you want?
Yeah.
And then to spray it with all these, anything that says CIDE, whether it's a pesticide or a herbicide, and even the fertilizer is a salt base, it destroys the soil structure.
Wow. So I know that first, before we get into that, tell me what healthy soil looks like, what it has. I know that it's got like a microbiome and it's alive. It's got all of these, it's got worms but you'd be able to speak to it better than I can.
So I have a dairy farm.
Yeah.
So we have livestock that you can see in the field. There's more livestock under that green grass. I can't even list the names.
Wow.
The mycorrhizae, actually, I was reading about J.I. Rodale, and Rodale Research Farm is in Kutztown, Pennsylvania. It's not far from here.
Yeah.
And they've been doing side-by-side trials for 30 years, conventionally farmed soil and organic soil. And the yields are the same.
In terms of the amount
bushels
of
food per acre. Okay.
But the difference
is what they're using to produce that food and the soil. Because when you use chemical fertilizers, it dries the soil out. We have a thing called desertification. Okay. When the soil is laid bare, it gets hot. The sun shines on it.
Yeah.
It gets dry.
Yeah.
When it's tilled over and over and over again, they have a term called fertilicide. You use fertilizer, you use tillage, and you use pesticides and herbicides. And what that does is it kills everything living under the soil.
That's so sad.
The soil structure is destroyed by the tillage.
Yep.
It breaks up the soil structure. So when soil is managed properly, it has a lot of pore space, so it can absorb a lot of water.
Yep.
It has a lot of organic matter. The plants that are growing green vegetation, they have a process called photosynthesis from the sunshine.
Yeah.
And that feeds the roots, and that feeds all the bacteria and all the animals in the soil.
It's a beautiful system.
This creates its own fertility. It takes the nitrogen out of the air, fixes it in the ground, and feeds the plants.
Yes.
Now, when I go canoeing, you got two choices. You can paddle really hard going upstream, or you can go with the flow.
Yeah.
As a farmer, I'm a lazy farmer. I choose to go with the flow. I want to feed that soil, manure on top, keep it covered with green, with grass, let the cows graze it rotationally, and they're fertilizing it, And their hooves are impacting the soil.
Yes.
And this stimulates regrowth.
Yes. Beautiful way to paint God's intended creation, the way that it's supposed to
It works
operate.
if you mimic nature.
Yes.
Now, if I create a feedlot and I put 20,000 animals on that 1 acre, all the green is destroyed. Mm-hmm. It's compacted. Yep. And now you have a problem. That you have to address.
Well, I like your canoeing metaphor that you used, because that's such a good example of how the conventional farming model, it's not sustainable. Just in the same way that you can only paddle upstream for so long until you can't anymore. It's not sustainable that way.
I just watched the Real Organic Project Summit, and they talked about the green revolution, and they talked about how these companies that make the fertilizer. Mm-hmm. The pesticides and the herbicides and the GMO seeds have gone to third world countries, and they've interrupted the agriculture with the sales pitch of increasing yields to feed the starving, and they've destroyed the rural economy. Because these farmers can't afford to buy the inputs.
They can't leave well enough alone. They have to go other places with their toxicity. That is very sad.
And then this impacts the health of the individuals.
Yes.
They get obese.
Exactly. So let's talk about that, because you've just painted a picture for how the soil is being affected.
Yes.
And then you also said that conventional versus organic is producing the same yields. Talk to me about the difference in quality of the food, in the nutrient density of the food, because you just painted the beautiful picture of what's happening under the surface. So say that you've got, I guess just let's stick with corn. If you were to grow an ear of corn conventionally versus organically, how does that differ?
Oh my goodness. This book is all about that.
Okay.
This book is also a movie.
Oh, nice.
Kiss the Ground by Josh Tickle. Mm-hmm. Took a lot of driving, a lot of interviewing, a lot of filming, a lot of research. I think it starts in Paris.
Wow.
Yeah. At a soil convention. Actually, a climate convention. Mm-hmm. You see, the solution to our climate problems is in how we handle the soil. Mm-hmm. All these are tied together because everything is tied together.
Yes.
So this book... can you remember your question now? I got to get back on track.
Oh, that's okay. Conventional farming versus, I guess, organic, and the nutrient density of the food.
The nutrition is a direct result of the diversity of what's in the soil.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes.
Diversity is a very beneficial thing.
Yeah.
When you have a monocrop, let's say you plant 80 million acres of corn. Mm-hmm. Do you think a corn worm is going to be happy?
Yes.
Because he's got the whole world.
He's got a buffet.
Yeah, okay. But if you diversify, the Indians used to, what was that called? They planted...
The Three Sisters, I think.
Three Sisters.
Yeah.
They diversified, and the purpose behind that was one would feed the other and support the other.
Yeah.
And they would yield more.
Yes.
In a diverse planted garden.
And as you started to say with the cornworm, it does help with pest pressure and disease pressure because it all works together.
What we're learning now, and I'm not an expert on this, is that these plants have exudates. An exudate is something that exits the root system, and it warns neighboring plants.
Oh, wow.
They have chemical flavorings.
Interesting.
That ward off pests.
Wow.
They're a team. And if you put enough plants, Gabe Brown is out in North Dakota, and he's in the book later on. He puts multiple cover crops. He actually plants his garden all in one.
Wow.
He doesn't have rows.
Okay.
And he doesn't have sections for different plants. Mm-hmm. He puts them all in the same... Now, that sounds like a headache, doesn't it?
It does, yeah.
Because they're not all ripe at the same time.
Right.
And how are you going to find the tomatoes in the midst of the beans?
Yeah.
But it actually increases the yield.
Sure.
And it builds the soil.
I'm sure.
Exponentially faster.
Yeah. And then the health of the food that he's getting out of it is probably a lot better.
What he does to solve the headache of harvesting is he brings in lots of people.
Okay. And they all work on it together. Yep.
You see where this is going?
Yeah. Yeah.
If we involve more people in the food growing and producing end of it, instead of just the consuming end, now you know where your food's coming from. You participate in it. Yeah. Now we're getting back to the way we started.
Wow.
With an agrarian society.
Isn't it funny how it seems that's where we're headed?
Well, if we want it to work so that we're healthy, the soil is healthy, what about the animals?
Yes.
John, we got to make a video of the calves when they're cleaning the calf pens. Oof. In Spain, they have the running of the bulls. Yeah. Now, we raise the heifer calves and the bull calves. They have different colored ear tags, but they're all in this pen. Okay. And they're raised right, nursing the cows. Yeah. And the cows go outside, and then we empty a pen at a time, and they've got a 120-foot barn, and they are just racing. Oh. Megan set up her phone in a bale of hay, and they're jumping it like hurdles.
I would love to see this. You're right. You should get a video of that.
Next time we do one, we'll get a clip of the racing of the bulls.
I want to see.
In Alfred. But they're exuberant.
They're so happy.
They are happy. They are kicking. They are stretching. Yeah. They are running. And then I put some fresh bedding in their pen. Kelby's cleaning it out. We put some hay in there. They get a drink while they're out here. They go back in. Then they lay down and take a nap.
Well, and I know that where we're headed with this is more scientific, but I just want to pause and say that morally and ethically, if I'm going to eat meat, I want to get my meat from a place like that, where the cows are literally having a great time. Like, they're living their best little cow lives.
You know, I don't know how many meat eaters we have out there, and it doesn't matter. I'm not trying to change their diet, but let me just say, I'm 70 years old. The day is coming when I'm going to die. Hopefully it'll be another 30 years because I want to see the grandkids grow up. Aww. But death is a part of the process.
It is.
If you look at the soil, the only way a grain of wheat can grow is if it goes in the soil and dies.
Wow.
And then it sends a sprout out.
Yeah.
And new life comes out of it.
Yeah. Beautiful.
And this is the living process.
Yeah.
Actually, we're going to get into this. Our next podcast, we'll get into this.
Okay.
I gotta get back on track. So we're talking about the soil.
Yes. And so we were talking about the soil and how the farming practices are harming it. And then we talked about the nutrient density of the food that it's growing. We can also talk about that in terms of the animals too, because you brought up the animals and there are different farming practices there as well in the same way that there are for plants.
So I'm a dairy farmer. We're talking about the nutrition of the food that the animals produce.
Yes.
Now, as a dairy farm, we produce milk and eventually meat as well.
Yes.
So I didn't really know a lot about this for many years. And then when the organic market came, I started feeding organic grains. But it wasn't until we went to the grass-fed market that I really was made aware of the difference in the milk.
Yes.
Now, folks, I'm the same farmer. It's the same farm. It's the same barn. It's the same cows.
Yeah.
But how I feed them changes the nutritional value of that milk.
Yes.
Here's a fact. When we were feeding grain, we would get more volume of milk, more pounds of milk per cow per day. When we stopped feeding the grain, the production declined in the pounds of milk.
Yes.
But the butterfat remained the same.
Wow.
The pounds of butterfat remained the same.
Okay.
So if you looked at the cream line on my milk, the same cows being fed grain, it might be an inch of cream. But when we took the grain away and they're just on grass and hay, it's a third more.
Wow. And that cream line is so good.
For those of you that don't know anything about cream and fat,
the
butterfat in the milk is the vitamin carrier.
Wow.
When you make butter, all those vitamins stay in the butter.
Wow.
So much so, it's an inverted emulsion. If you have fluid milk, you could get a pathogen or a bacteria in there, and they can multiply.
Okay.
Not so with butter.
Really?
It is a different substance. It's so dense that a bad bacteria cannot travel through it.
Wow.
So it has a long shelf life.
Yes.
And it is dense in nutrition. I mean, butter is pound for pound, dollar for dollar, dynamite.
Wow.
It is the nutrition go-to if you want to build your body and to feed it what it needs.
Yes. Well, I will just add a little personal thing to that. I've been consuming your all's butter now for, I think we're coming up on a year, and I've been working on building up my nutritional stores because my husband and I want to get pregnant. And I will say that I don't skimp on the butter. Okay. I really like your all's butter, and I eat a lot of it, and I have seen absolutely a difference in my health for sure.
Now, we went through a time when the people that made oleomargarine, they had very negative comments towards butter.
I'm sure they did.
They tried to make that. Now, let's just be practical. Humanity's been around for quite a few years. And they have been eating butter. Actually, let's go back to this book. 1910, 50% of all milk. Now, these guys are milking by hand, folks, and into an open pail.
Yeah.
We didn't have electricity. We didn't have milking machines. Every housewife made butter from the extra milk.
Yeah.
50% of all the milk produced back in the 1900s was consumed fresh fluid.
Okay.
This is before pasteurization or anything. 30% was made into butter.
Wow, that's a high percentage.
Cheese was 3%.
Oh, no kidding.
Yes.
Well, probably because it's just harder to do.
Well, we had, they didn't have cheese plants.
Right.
They didn't have trucks. They didn't have,
It was just happening in people's kitchens.
So basically you had fluid milk, you had butter, which increased the shelf life of the butter. And then they had the trains and they could ship it to the city.
Yeah.
But there was very little marketing of other products. It was just consumed fluid and butter.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. So when you say other products, things like ice cream and the very, very small, those were novelty items, very small percentage.
I wasn't around. That would be a good question when I'm going through.
Well, I mean, I think you can't, at that time, you can't ship ice cream,
No.
So
we're going to have a family reunion on the Jaycock side of the family.
Fun.
In August.
Yeah.
And they're 90 years old.
Okay.
And their dad, Grandpa Jaycox, was a dairy farmer.
Yeah.
And I'm going to ask him, did you ever make ice cream?
Yeah. I want to know.
Do you know what the first answer I'm going to give? They didn't have ice.
Well.
Let's just be practical.
All right. Yeah. Yeah.
In 1800, you didn't have electricity. You didn't have ice machines.
Oh, man.
They did have ice. Where did they get their ice in those days?
From the ice house.
Okay. So they had a pond. Actually, it was...
like how they... Okay.
It was Valentine's Day, and Alfred University had an antique movie film of harvesting of ice off the pond, and they had like a wooden channel.
Okay.
And they had the ice house.
Yes, okay.
And the guy with a hook was pulling they had to cut the ice.
Wow.
With a saw.
Yeah.
And they would hook and pull the ice up onto this wooden, it's like a train track.
Yeah.
And the ice would slide into the ice house, and they used sawdust between the layers so they wouldn't freeze together.
Wow.
So they could separate them, and they stacked the ice house. So do you think they made a lot of ice cream?
No, probably not. Probably not. That's really cool though, that so much of it. So they were mostly drinking the milk fluid, and then they were consuming a large percentage in the butter. The butter has the high
that was the shelf life product to go to.
All right.
In the present food system, we use ultra pasteurized milk for the shelf
devoid of everything.
That's 283 degrees. That's beyond. I mean, when I'm making maple syrup, that only reaches 219.
Wow.
For maple syrup. I mean, they have killed everything.
That's like pressure canner.
Enzymes, amino acids, all the proteins, everything is denatured and killed.
Yeah.
So you might as well drink water.
And I do say I call store-bought milk white water. I mean, it's not.
If you're looking for nutrition, you need the closer to the fresh product. Use strawberries. I mean, you pick a fresh strawberry, you got a gold mine.
Yeah.
A frozen strawberry is awful good, but there's nothing that compares to anything fresh. So we need to learn to eat seasonally. We need to learn to store or prepare, preserve our food.
Yes.
So that we can get the nutrition that we want.
Yes.
This sounds like work, but go ahead.
It does. Let's talk about this compared to conventional farming practices. So you just painted a beautiful picture of grass-fed, the milk that you guys are producing.
Yep.
How is that different from the milk? Well, other than the fact that they are pasteurizing it, obviously, so everything is killed.
Okay.
But they're also feeding non-organic grains. And is there anything, let me ask it a different way. Is there anything harmful about the food that is conventionally farmed? This book has a lot.
I got to open up and read it.
Okay.
Because I can't.
Give it to us.
I can't give it justice. So market milk was the fluid milk that they could sell. Milk is classed as adulterated when it contains more than 88.5% of water. In other words, if you add water to it. When it contains less than 11.5% of solids. When it has less than 3% of fats. When drawn from animals just 15 days or 5 days after they deliver a calf. When cows are fed on distillery waste or on any substance in a state of fermentation or putrefaction or on any unwholesome food.
Wow.
This is adulterated food. If you feed those cows anything that fits that last one. Now, most of our byproducts, distillers' dried grains, all these things come as a result of other food processing.
Yeah.
And they take the waste. Hope this doesn't gross anybody out. They use feather meal.
Yeah.
Bone meal, blood meal. They take things that are waste products from other industries and they mix them in to feed the cows. And
just side note, the cows are not meant to be eating these things. This is not what their stomachs are meant to digest. They're not meant to be eating them, are they?
This has created new diseases.
I bet.
Okay. There's others in here. When the milk has been diluted with water or with any other fluid, or when any foreign substance has been added thereto. You couldn't add anything to the milk.
Like how they're adding synthetic vitamins and...
anything. So our food laws have changed to enable the fat to be sorted out. And then they couldn't sell skim milk. They couldn't sell 1% or 2%.
Right.
These were adulterated foods.
Interesting. And it's interesting to me how everybody at the time accepted that. And this isn't what this podcast is about, but it's just interesting to me how over time that line of thinking has been derailed. And now it's just all of our food is adulterated now. There's very little left that's pure.
If I was to talk to someone in the food regulatory industry about these facts, what do you think they would say?
They'd probably just laugh.
Well, that was back then.
Yeah. Right.
They would just say, that's what we know better now.
Yeah. Can't stop progress, right?
Can't start. But if we're after nutrition, we should figure out what causes better nutrition.
Yes.
You know, an egg is an egg. But they are very different in the nutritional quality depending on the life of that chicken.
Oh, yes.
I mean, night and day.
Oh, yeah. Even in how they look, they're different. Yes.
Yeah. The way they cook. I mean, chefs will tell you a lot about this.
Yeah.
As a farmer, I didn't know that.
Mm.
You know what? I have an old apple orchard planted 100 years ago. Wow. And I had all these apples, and I didn't know what kind they were. And people would want to know, well, what kind of apple have you got? I said, I don't know.
100-year-old kind.
So I put numbers on each of the trees, and then I labeled the apples, and I sent them to Geneva to the Agricultural Experiment Station.
Wow.
To have them identified.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah. Guess what they said?
What did they say?
Well, one of them was a northern spy. I could tell which one was the northern spy.
Okay.
They picked out that one.
Yeah.
6 of them were wealthies. That's an old, early applesauce apple. It's a soft apple.
Oh, that's cool.
So I had 6 of those.
Okay.
And the other 50, they had no idea.
Wow, couldn't identify them.
No. So I got a book this thick, Apples of New York State. You know how many apple varieties there are?
To fill a book that thick. Enough for that.
Now, one of them, and this was my favorite eating apple. It was very red, very white flesh, and had a nice snap when you bit into it.
Yeah.
And it was a snow apple.
Wow.
And the snow apple, my favorite eating apple, is the parent to the Macintosh.
No kidding.
Yes.
No kidding.
So I went to the county fair, and I went in with the preservatives and the jams and everything, and I was signing the guest book, and I got talking to the ladies. They were in their 90s, and I mentioned that fact to them. You've got snow apples? They knew about them, and it was their favorite apple.
Have you been saving seeds from these so that you can plant more of them?
You know what happened to the snow apple tree?
No, don't break my heart right now. What happened? No.
It's gone.
God gives and God takes.
Well, there are other snow apple trees out there.
Okay, good.
But as I get time, that would be something I would have grafted that onto.
Yes.
We just planted a Macintosh.
Wow.
I could have grafted that on.
That's the daughter of the.
Yeah,
wow.
yeah.
That's incredible. All right. So, is there anything that you can think of consuming the conventionally raised anything, the meat, the vegetables, any of it, that is harmful to our health? Can you speak to that at all?
We talked originally about our food system being agrarian.
Yeah.
The organic market started in the late 1970s, 90s, in that frame. People started raising food differently.
Yeah.
What that shows me is some people were not satisfied with the status quo.
Right.
They could have been individuals, and they were doing their own food system. But they were not pleased with what they were seeing being used. LR was a pesticide that was used on apples.
Okay.
And that just was like an alarm going off. And the public reacted to that. And the organic movement began. So what is the organic movement? It's a move away from the chemical fertilizers, pesticides, herbicides.
Yes.
And a more holistic, diverse approach in caring for the soil, building the soil.
Yeah.
So less inputs, less chemicals, no GMOs. So we're seeing, and this is driven by, there's a chart in here, straight up, of the growth of organic food sales.
Okay.
And we converted to organic milk production, and it was double the price.
Yeah, well, because you said you're not. Do you have to feed grain to the?
We fed organic grain, and it was quite expensive.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. That would probably be why.
Actually, Kelby always wanted to go out west and run a combine.
Wow.
So I bought a combine, and we grew triticale, which is a cross between wheat and rye.
Okay, so that you could feed it.
That field right behind the house, right by the church.
Yeah.
We had 20 acres of triticale.
Wow.
It was this tall. It was a blue-green.
Very cool.
I mean, and it was like waves of the ocean.
Yeah.
And people would come over the top of the hill, and they would see this blue-green, wavy
How
grain,
beautiful.
And they would stop. What is that? I said, that's triticale. But my goal was to grow our own grain.
Yes.
And to be self-sufficient.
Right.
Instead of buying the grain.
Yeah.
And then it got so expensive. Actually, the organic market got corrupted.
Of course it did.
They were importing grains from other countries, selling them as organic, changing the paperwork. So the price declined. And so then we went to grass-fed. So now everything is just green grass.
Okay. Good.
Which I listened to a grain grower who wrote the book on organic grain production just before he passed away. And his last statement, and he showed beautiful pictures of all his machinery and his whole life spent, he had his own, he sold grain for human consumption.
Wow.
I mean, this guy was the leader in the field.
Interesting.
And he said grain is a heavy feeder of the soil.
Yes.
And grass is better.
Okay.
And when he said that, an alarm went off in my mind, and I said, that's what I was waiting to hear. Not against growing grain.
Well, and it just takes a lot less input. You don't need you don't need the combine, right, for the grass. Or
well, if you have horses and you're farming with horses, you need some oats to feed to the horses.
Yeah.
But that's where a crop rotation comes in.
Yes.
And
so you're not exhausting the soil.
And so you don't grow. Actually, what happened in 1880s, people don't know this, in Wisconsin, they were growing wheat year after year after year. And the pests were destroying the crop.
Yeah.
And the wheat yields were declining.
Sure.
And the farmers were going out of business. Does this sound like today?
Yeah.
Guess who showed up to save the day? W.D. Horde became governor of Wisconsin.
Mm-hmm.
He grew up in Stockbridge, New York, right up near Utica.
Yeah.
His father was a pastor of the Methodist Church there. And he became governor, and he got them to put cows on the land to fertilize the soil. And Wisconsin became the dairy state, the cheese capital of this nation.
Wow.
He saved the industry from all those farmers going out of business.
By diversifying.
By putting the animals back on the on a small scale. Mm-hmm. I mean, Wisconsin has multitudes of small family farms and cheesemakers everywhere.
Wow. Well, so you were just talking about the organic situation. Yep. So talk to me about, because there are plenty of corporations not using, they're not organic, they're using the pesticides, the herbicides, and all of those things. How is that affecting, how does that trickle down to affect us and our health in terms of the modern food making us sick, right?
Okay. I mentioned the Real Organic Project Summit that I just watched.
Yes.
The organic market, there was a law passed, Organic Food Production Act, about 2000. And so organic has a definition, and the USDA enforces that.
Okay.
Now, if you're a big food company, you see this competition coming from this organic market, and it's growing, 20% per year.
Sure.
It's taking off.
Yeah.
Because food now has an option. Mm-hmm. Now when you go to the store, you look for organic.
Yeah. People are spending, and it's more expensive. People are spending their money on it.
Okay. So the big companies put some of their people in the regulatory realm to allow things in the organic food so that they could continue to do business as usual and capture some of that income.
Yeah.
Which decline the price of organic dairy specifically.
Yeah, for the people who were truly doing it the right way.
And we're at the point where in New England, 180 farms lost a market, small family dairy farms, just because it costs too much money to pick up that milk.
Wow.
These are small farms.
Wow.
Small amount of milk. You got to run a milk truck. All these little farms, it costs a lot of money.
Yeah.
Now, what that shows us is this industrial model that has been developing is mature. Mm-hmm. I'm 70 years old. I'm mature. I have retired, and the younger generation has the energy to run the store and run the farm, and they're doing a magnificent job.
Wow, good. Yeah, they are.
But the industrial model is struggling right now. Mm-hmm. When COVID hit, the stores were empty. The farmers had the milk, and they had to dump the milk because the supply chain was too long. Now, what is the solution to a long supply chain that is going to break?
Eating locally?
So these small family farms, see, this is my goal for my retirement, is to provide a viable market for small dairy farms.
Yeah.
Because there's still some left in the third state.
And there are more people becoming interested in wanting to do it.
And they're spread out all over the state.
Yeah.
And we've got the Finger Lakes dividing up the state, so it's not easy to get from here to there.
Sure.
So they need a local market.
Yeah.
So they don't have to spend the money on building $1 million processing plant.
Yeah, right.
To sell their milk.
Yeah.
What did they do in the beginning before they had, we have refrigeration, we have milking machines, we have stainless steel tanks, we have healthy cows,
yeah,
we have grass, we have local markets, we have farmers markets.
Yeah. You have CSA.
They sold fluid milk and butter.
Yeah.
Isn't that amazing?
Yes.
Now, this is a hard sell. Because if you are a big company, are you going to just let these guys do that?
You don't want to.
Unless you understand something.
What is that?
I just went to the summit in Albany, Dairy Innovation Summit. The former editor of the Howard's Dairyman magazine was there, and he did a wonderful presentation. I actually showed him this book because he went to, this is from Madison, Wisconsin. Mr. Russell was the dean of agriculture at this college.
Wow.
And I showed this to the guy who was he went to the school.
Yeah.
So probably the building he went to was named Russell.
Oh.
In memory of him.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah. So I showed him that book, and he mentioned in his presentation, which he did a marvelous job, the elephant in the room is the declining 70 years of decline of fluid milk consumption.
Wow.
I told you it was 50% in 1900.
And 30% butter, yep.
Okay. Today, the fluid milk consumption is 26%.
Wow.
Now, we just talked about the small family dairy farms and the nutritional quality, grass-fed milk.
Yes.
And the people desiring local food.
Yeah.
And that I want to find a market for these farmers.
Yes.
So they can sell their milk and or butter to these housewives so they can have good nutrition.
Yeah.
Do you think this might capture some of that fluid milk consumption that's been lost?
I hope so.
Now, the taste, the other thing I learned up there was the determining factor is taste for food items. It has to taste good.
Yes.
You make a beautiful blueberry pie. We've been watching the British baking show, and one guy put salt. He thought it was sugar.
Oof.
And Paul did the taste test, and he said, "Mary, don't taste that."
Oh, no.
He spit it out because it was salt.
I know in one of our previous podcast episodes, you've talked about the difference in taste in the milk and how the way that you guys do it, it tastes better. It tastes, and I can attest to that. If
I was going to be a salesman and you put me on commission, do you know how I would sell fresh milk? By giving samples? No. Well, yes. First, I would have John make some chocolate brownies and some chocolate chip cookies. And then I would set up a table, and I would give them away. And then I would stand there with a glass of milk. Because what do you need to go with a glass? You can't have those without, milk. You need a glass of milk. It's true. And once they get thirsty, even people that have a problem mentally, a fear of raw milk. Yeah. I mean, it's fresh. I don't know anybody has a problem with a fresh strawberry. Right. Yeah. Let me add them. Yeah. I'm going to go look for some ice cream or put them and make a milkshake out of them or something. So I would just give them something delicious for dessert and then give them a follow-up drink of milk. Yeah. We actually did a taste test on the university campus. I believe it. How did it do? We had organic milk and we had fresh raw milk. 100%. Really? Taste test. This is a blind taste test. They don't know which is which. Yeah. Well, because you've got a living food versus whitewater. All right. Now, for the final question that we're going to discuss today is alternatives to the conventional model, both in crops as well as with animals. But I think we've covered
quite a bit of already in this episode. Is there anything else that you would add?
People ask me for years. We have a dairy farm, 400-acre dairy farm.
Yeah, wow.
45 cows, and then we raise all the bull calves for steers. So we have 130 head. Why don't you have chickens? We have chickens. You need to come and see our chickens. I don't know the correct term, but our videographer was outside working on his laptop with the chickens all around in the yard. These are quite nice chickens.
They're nice, and you guys definitely, you're the picture of free range.
Oh my gosh. They are very happy chickens.
They greet me when I get out of my car here.
So we have goats, we have pigs, we have cows, we have chickens. A diverse farm is a beautiful thing.
Yeah, I agree.
It is. We have an apple orchard. We just finished tapping trees. We were in the woods pulling the spiles yesterday. Fresh maple syrup.
Wonderful.
I don't have bees yet. And I'm not afraid of getting stung. So it's probably...
I have to add that in the future. Yeah. Another retirement project for you.
Yep. It's when we plant more apple trees, we'll have to put some bees in there.
Nice. That'll be a good spot for them.
But this is out. Let's go back to my canoe trip.
Yes.
I'm 70 years old. Which way do you think I'm going? Up the river or down the river?
Down. Yeah. Yeah. With the stream.
With the flow of nature.
Yes.
When you have diversity, the things that we don't even understand that are taking place in the soil,
I know,
are benefiting us.
Yeah. Our health.
We don't have to spend the money on the inputs because we have the animal manure. We have chicken tractors. Megan is going to increase the volume of birds that she raises this year.
That's cool.
And they're fertilizing. You got to come and I'll show you the lawn where the chicken tractors
are. I'm sure it's lush.
The chickens do that. It's a side benefit. We didn't do anything to make that happen other than let the chickens roam.
Well, and they get to be happy, and they're working for you. They're doing work for your farm.
And you know what? I have a newspaper clipping from the Lancaster Farming newspaper, written by an old, I'm guessing maybe even Amish farmer. And it describes the farm.
Yeah.
And the pigs had babies. The chickens had chicks. They had babies. The cows had calves. The horses had foals. They saved some of the oat seed and planted it next year. They had no inputs.
Yeah.
That's what a farm is.
Yeah. Well, I think the word that comes to mind with what you just said is sustainable.
There's one problem with all this. I went to school and I was trained to pick one thing, dairy farming.
Yeah.
And to make it big because of efficiency.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now let's talk about efficiency.
Okay.
We just got through talking about my canoe trip downstream.
Yes.
And the diversity of a farm and how the old guy's article said he didn't have any purchased inputs. You know what? They wanted him to buy a tractor. You know what he told them?
What?
When you develop a tractor that has a baby tractor that replaces itself, I will purchase a tractor. Because the way nature was created, there is a seed within that replaces it.
Yeah. Yep. That's so true. Wow.
That's
profound.
Of nature.
Yeah. And you can work with it to your end. You can still do everything you need to do and want to do and profit off of it the right way, that way.
And you know what? It's okay to graft that snow apple onto that Macintosh tree because it's new and young.
Yeah.
I'm not against that.
Yeah.
And people would probably really appreciate that.
Yeah.
You know, it might be a special treat.
Yeah.
But we have to learn the limits of nature. And now this whole idea, this concept is going to create a need for many more people on small, diverse, local farms.
Yeah.
And the other thing I learned at this summit, this is from the Commissioner of Agriculture, Richard Ball, we have too few young people on the farms. We have to raise them up.
Yes.
Because the average age is 60 years.
Yes. I want us to just make a side comment here and say that my husband and I want to be farmers, and they don't make it easy. It is very difficult to break into it. Land is very expensive, and if you weren't born into it or don't inherit it in some way or anything like that, it's very, being a wannabe first generation farmer is hard. At least it is in New York. At least it is in New York.
You're right. You're absolutely right. So what's the answer?
Yeah, what is the answer?
You see, if we go back to these years,
yeah,
we've seen a steady decline. So we're not going to find the answer here.
Right.
Except, I think I got an answer.
What do you have?
I think I got an answer. This is from H.L. Russell, Harry Lumen Russell. He had 4 kids. 2 of them died. One was 15 days and one was before he was 2 years old. Aww. He studied under Louis Pasteur. He was a microbiologist, the dean of agriculture. Milk is subject to contamination during all stages of its handling, not only with the putrefactive bacteria, but with disease-producing organisms as well. It is best adapted for human food in the condition in which it is drawn from the udder of the healthy cow. The effort should be to deliver it unimpaired to the consumer.
So to me, that translates to going back to a local model, right? If that last sentence to give it to the consumer.
So last night I got an email. I've got a relative who works in Washington, D.C. For the Right to Work Committee. And I talked with him on the phone, and he sent me a little video of Congressman Thomas Massie. He's a farmer from Kentucky.
Oh, cool.
And he is on a food freedom endeavor.
Wow. I like the sound of that. I like food and I like freedom.
He's written a constitutional amendment that would come before the Judiciary Committee, which he's on. And basically what he's saying is, we as Americans want the freedom to choose what we eat.
Yes. Yeah.
Now, what motivated this is, remember I talked earlier about corporate capture? When these huge food companies get their own people in these agencies that make the laws that require pasteurization, inspection of your meat by federal inspectors, and there are no processing facilities for you to do that, we have a problem. We lack choices. Now, freedom is a great thing, but if you don't have any choices, because of the regulatory right,
then what good does it do you?
So this last night, this is hot off the press.
Wow.
Food freedom, basically, it would be a law that would state we have sovereignty over what we choose to eat, and nothing that's staying within our state lines from the federal government can get in the way.
Wow. Do you think it's going to go anywhere?
I'm going to jump on it.
Good.
And I'm going to spread the word.
Yes.
You heard about it. Thomas Massie, congressman from Kentucky. Food freedom. Anybody interested?
What can we do? Anything?
Well, obviously, the first thing you can do is contact his office. My congressman is Nick Langworthy. So the first thing I'm going to do is get a hold of him. I've already got a hold of him before for the Farm Bill. He's on the Ag Committee. So this is right up his alley. So this is a new movement in Washington, D.C.
Wow. This is exciting.
I mean, like last night.
I feel like I'm in on something right now.
So if you want to be a farmer, or if you want to be eater of healthy, nutritious food, here's your chance.
That's good.
Contact your leaders in Washington and say, this needs to get passed. What can I do to help? And then spread the word. And any of your leaders need to hear from you. very few of us contact our leaders in Washington.
Yeah, I haven't. And I'm passionate about things, and I haven't.
If you call and you talk to them, they will take note of it. And this is how America was designed to bring about the changes that we need.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Good. Okay. Wow. Well, a lot of information shared in this episode. This one is a lot to digest. I might have to, this one might be a good one to listen to more than once so you can really fully digest all of this information. But we talked about a lot of the problems in this episode. And in the next one, we are going to talk about some of the solutions.
Yep.
So stay tuned for that. Thanks so much for listening, guys.